If America can stay at the cutting edge of space, get to the cutting edge of silicon photonics, if Tesla and then others can basically get to the cutting edge of humanoid robotics, which is something that I strongly believe is
why fundamentally cheap space travel will unlock so many things that will actually turn into quality of life improvements for the average person who's left on planet Earth.
People have this mental model that space is very...
Picture a guy who treats the frontier like his backyard. That's Shaun Maguire, and he was gracious enough to join us on the show today to discuss energy breakthroughs, factory floors humming with humanoid robots, brain-machine computers, and space exploration. In fact, Shaun's even invested in a company who shoots satellites into outer space to beam light rays back at Earth and turn night into day. It's crazy stuff. And he walks us through exactly which of these sci-fi visions are already sneakily here today, which will upend entire industries in months, and which have the opportunity to reshape entire civilizations over the next couple of years. Some of the timelines even left me speechless.
And that is what the Limitless Podcast is all about. So, Bankless Nation, welcome to Limitless, where we explore the frontier technologies that are poised to reshape our world. I'm David Hoffman, joined by my co-host Josh Kale, and our very first guest is Sequoia Capital frontier tech investor Shaun Maguire. Now, if you are hearing this on the Bankless feed, don't worry, Bankless isn't going anywhere. And if you found us on the Limitless feed, congrats, you're ahead of the curve. Limitless is a brand new podcast out of Bankless, focusing on frontier technologies and getting ahead of a rapidly accelerating future. Bankless will return to focusing on crypto and markets with Ryan and me at the helm. And Limitless is where Josh, Ijaz, and I, and also sometimes Ryan, will chase the future. How AI and other frontier technologies are going to impact our lives and what we need to know and do about it. If you're familiar with the Bankless cadence, you'll find yourself right at home with Limitless. On Monday, we're going to do deep dive interviews with founders and investors that are building the future. And then on Thursdays, we have the weekly AI roll-up, our fast-moving recap of the week's biggest AI headlines. Now, I'm pretty biased here, but I think the AI roll-up is truly the most accessible, informative, and engaging AI news show out there. So if all of this sounds like your jam, hit subscribe on your favorite podcast app or YouTube. There's a link in the show notes to go find Limitless. And if you don't mind, we would definitely appreciate a quick 5-star review and also sharing it with your friends to help more curious minds stay ahead of the curve. Your support, of course, powers everything we do. And so thank you for coming on the ride with us as we push into brand new frontiers. Now with that, let's get right into the debut episode on the Limitless Podcast with Shaun Maguire from Sequoia Capital. Bankless Nation, today on the podcast, we have Shaun Maguire. He's a partner at Sequoia Capital. Shaun's got one of the more interesting backgrounds that I've ever seen, starting out working as a physicist, working on quantum gravity, then spent time working at DARPA, where he was deployed to Afghanistan, then shift gears into startups and investing. He co-founded a cybersecurity company called Expanse, which was later acquired by Palo Alto Networks. And then he's also been an early backer of companies like Visa, Watershed, SpaceX. At Sequoia, he's focusing on early stage investments, especially in hard and frontier technologies, which is why we wanted to bring him on the show today. Shaun, welcome to Bankless.
What's up, guys? Thrilled to be here. First of all, did not start with quantum gravity, started probably with an F in Algebra 2. So I've had a lot of failures before the successes. And unfortunately, I was on early backer in Visa. I think you meant Vise. And
Excuse me.
Just all good. Visa would have been pretty legendary, and hopefully Vise becomes even bigger.
Yeah, I guess Visa is just the wrong generation. It was a little bit earlier than all of us here. So maybe with that, since I need a little bit more help kind of understanding your background, just expand on your perch a little bit for listeners who just might need more context about, what your deal is, who you are, and especially as we get into more modern times with all of the crazy technologies that we have today, just explaining a little bit of your context and what interests you and how your arc has been, I think would be pretty helpful.
Sure. Thrilled to be here. I've been a big fan of the pod for a long time.
Appreciate it.
So I'll try to keep this pretty brief, but I would say kind of my childhood was characterized by just not listening to what I was told to do instead of paying attention in school or even going to class a lot of the time. I just stayed home or would even in school would focus on my own learning. And I've basically been obsessed with computers, the internet, then physics, then math, basically my entire life. Computers really started at the age of 7. Mm-hmm. And so I kind of sacrificed not learning English very well for learning a lot about computers at a young age. And, I took it pretty seriously. I was really into building computers, really into like honestly understanding like how computers are made, understanding silicon at a pretty young age, and understanding a lot of industries. I've just kind of been driven by curiosity my whole life. I was really obsessed with the chemical industry as a kid. I'm happy to talk about the chemical industry today. To me, it's honestly one of the most fascinating industries in the world. It's $5 trillion a year in sales. No one knows anything about it. It's bigger than oil and gas. It's where everything comes from. But it's just like I'm giving that as an example. That I have 100 anecdotes like that. It's just kind of being really interested in different things and spending time going pretty deep at a young age. And now as an investor, I get to kind of invest in those things, basically I get to invest in things that were childhood passions. So like in the chemicals instance, I'm an investor in a chemicals marketplace called Node, KNOWDE, and almost every investment I've made at Sequoia can be traced to some deep childhood obsession. Like with SpaceX, I was completely obsessed with space from a very young age. Like I started off at the age of 9 being obsessed with the solar system, but then like starting to learn about rockets and, like taking that all the way to having a failed space launch company in my early 20s. But kind of, I think that's what people need to understand about me is that the investments I make now, like it's not coming from 2 years of thinking about something. It's coming from, 20 to 30 years.
I think that background is really helpful because the reason why we want to get you on today is just to talk about all the frontier technologies that really seem to be maturing seemingly all at once. People often joke that the world has not been the same ever since Harambe was killed in 2016. But I think I want to actually take that a little bit more seriously and fast forward to the world has not been the same ever since ChatGPT 3.5 came out in 2022. Because now, just a few years later, Elon is catching rockets flying out of the air. We have actual robots walking among us. I just saw a video today of a robot boxing league coming out of China. So that's pretty crazy. Driverless cars are actually in production, driving people around. And then now also, of course, we have people talking about actual AGI coming in 2 years or less. So it just feels like this current moment of time seems especially unique and seems like you've been thinking about a lot of these things as they have been maturing. From your vantage point as an investor in Sequoia, how does this just period of history feel for you right now?
Well articulated. This period feels insanely exciting. I truly feel like unbelievably privileged and lucky to be an investor in this time. I have been very passionate about the history of venture capital, for over 20 years. And I think that if you look in VC, there were kind of like, depends how you define it, but like 2 to 4 really great periods before today. And I think we're, and some examples were the early computing era. It depends how broad your interests are, but, early internet era, then like the .com era. I would say, in my opinion, like the early mobile era was incredible with giant companies being created very quickly. And now we're in this kind of new era where you have both AI and a resurgence of hardware happening simultaneously. And so I truly feel incredibly lucky to be an investor right now. And I think to build on that, I think the AI stuff is more obvious to the public. Like it's talked about all the time. Like it's kind of incredible. And NVIDIA has become like a hardware company has become such a popular hot company. But to take a bigger look at this, I wrote a manifesto at Sequoia about 3 years ago. It was like a hardware manifesto. And basically what I said in it was, if you look at Sequoia, 53-year-old firm now, is 50 years old when I wrote this. For the first 25 years of the firm, Sequoia made almost all of its money in hardware. In the last 25 years, we've made almost all of our money in software. And the question I asked was like, is hardware dead? Long live hardware? Or was there some weird kind of quirk of history or secular trend of why, hardware was not as popular, not as great of a way to make money, and that might come back? And I'm like, it was a straw man question. I'm strongly in the latter camp. And if you want, like right now, I can kind of drill into some of the like insights I have there. But I I really think we're entering this dual kind of golden phase of both hardware returning in mass at the same time that AI, which has both a hardware element and a software element, happening simultaneously. So it's pretty wild.
I think that actually is where we want to go first in this agenda, not specifically through hardware, but also discussing manufacturing. There's a bunch of subjects that we want to go one by one, starting with hardware and manufacturing. We also want to talk about energy, space exploration, everything Elon Musk is doing, hardware, human connections, even chemistry, if we can find time. But let's start there about manufacturing. Because as you said, the first 25 years of Sequoia's returns were all hardware investments. And I think this question of manufacturing is also especially timely, given that we are in the midst of this Trump's Liberation Day maneuvers, trying to bring back manufacturing back to the United States. Maybe just talk about the importance of hardware manufacturing, generally speaking, for software, and then also how important it is for here inside the United States.
Yeah, I mean, I'll start with, like, whatever one's view of politics are, like, America found itself in a position over the last 25 years where very little of, like, advanced technologies are made in America anymore. And this makes it much harder. This is like one of the reasons why it's been hard to create hardware companies in America. I think it was much bigger than that. Like, the primary thing is just where we were in Moore's Law and where we were in, like, different big platforms. But whenever the, like, hardware supply chain is in a place, it's much easier to innovate on, like, the final end product. And if you go back, so, like, I'll give an analogy from history. I was incredibly lucky as a child, like, genuinely just insanely lucky. I met this man named Arnold Beckman. I randomly met him. He was being pushed in a stroller, and he asked me a bunch of science questions. It's kind of a crazy story. I was like 8 years old. I was 9 years old. And this guy, I think Arnold is probably the most underrated person in the history of American technology, quite literally. Like, I think the most underrated person. I'll spend a couple minutes on this. I think it is, like, very important anecdote to understand kind of the challenges of manufacturing in America today. So basically, Beckman was a professor at Caltech. He was a chemistry professor. He was doing advanced chemistry, but he invented the portable pH meter to help farmers measure the acidity of oranges and when it was right time to pick oranges. And that ended up becoming a company called Beckman Instruments, which ended up at its height employing about 2,000 chemistry PhDs. And they made many, many different instruments, primarily for the chemicals industry and then for early pharma industry. And so anyway, so he was doing that. And he was known as, like, one of the apex minds at Caltech. And there was an undergrad named Bill Shockley. Like, Shockley was a brilliant guy, and he was attracted to Beckman. And so he became one of Beckman's kind of proteges. And then Shockley went to MIT to do his PhD. Then he went to Bell Labs. He invented the silicon transistor when he was at Bell Labs. Shockley is a much more common name than Beckman. Shockley got the Nobel Prize for inventing the silicon transistor. This is the part of the story that people don't know. So Shockley ended up going actually back to Caltech after Bell Labs for a couple of years to be visiting faculty, kind of figure out what to do next, and kind of back to work with his mentor, Arnold Beckman. And this is where they decided to start Shockley Semiconductor. Something that people don't know has kind of been lost in history is Shockley was actually not an independent company. It was a wholly owned subsidiary of Beckman Instruments, of this chemical instrumentation company. And so they started Shockley. Beckman was the chairman. They hired brilliant people like Bob Noyce and Gordon Moore and all these people that became the Traders 8. They left to start Fairchild. Then, Intel spun out of that. Beckman continued to be mentor to, like, the Intel founders as they built the company. Okay, so, like, here's where we get to the core point. For probably the first 30 years or so of building silicon, the hard thing was making wafers. Like, it was making very pure wafers and other chemical processes. So, like, to make a silicon wafer has about 20 chemical steps. And then a bunch of the other hard problems early on were all chemical problems. In the last 20 years, hard problem has become lithography. It's etching out these very fine, features. But for 20 to 30 years, the hardest thing was chemicals. And having this guy, Arnold Beckman, that had this insane chemicals company with 2,000 genius chemistry PhDs that were always making new equipment, having that sit literally right next to Intel meant that whenever Intel was running into a problem, kind of scaling the next generation of like silicon, trying to push, Moore's law forward, they would basically just share in real time, like, hey, we're running into this problem. They'd share it with Beckman and his chemists, and they'd be like, oh, this might be able to solve it, or if not, they would come up with some new instrument that could solve it. And having this coupling of the people that were pushing silicon forward sitting right next to people that were pushing chemicals forward and chemical instrumentation and sensors, et cetera, is what led to being able to scale the whole system at lightning speed. And the thing that we've lost in America in the last 25 years is we've lost this supply chain. We've lost this coupling, and so you have a couple very unique instances. You have Elon, basically, that has gone and into these kind of totally new areas and built his own supply chains kind of himself for his own companies. And so he's able to have this tight coupling because he's basically doing everything within his own companies. But for almost every other company, like if you are a drone company and your limiting factor is making motors, like the motors are being made in China, at least the best ones are being made in China. And, it's much harder to talk to the engineers. I mean, and now with what's happening in the world, like we can't even buy motors from them for a defense grade drone, but you don't get to go talk to the people building the components and learn what's coming 1 year from now. And you don't get to tell them what are your problems and have them go start putting them in their roadmap right now. And kind of getting that back, getting the whole supply chain back, the whole all these different components, it is not something you can do in 5 years. Like it's not even something you can really do in a decade. Maybe in individual verticals, like if we decide, making drones is a core national priority, then we can probably bring the supply chain just for drones into America in less than 10 years. But like if you wanted to do leading edge chip fabrication, I think America would really struggle even with 100% max effort to, catch up to where the cutting edge will be in 10 years over the next 10 years, because the supply chain is a few orders of magnitude more complex than for drones. And so this is it was one of the biggest mistakes, I think, in business history or in national history for America to let its entire supply chain kind of go starting in the late 90s to China. And I personally think it's very important that we bring it back. And I have a bunch of theories and philosophies about how we should do this. I think my view is kind of different than how most people are thinking about it today. But if your view of the world is that there will never be conflict again, we're at the end of history, then sure, globalization is great. Outsource your supply chain, just buy from everyone. But if you believe that we're not at the end of history, then I think it's pretty important to make at least critical components in America. And but I think we can't be naive about how hard this will be, and that you have to do it kind of systematically.
Yeah, that's what I was super interested in talking to you about, is where those constraints actually lie when it comes to manufacturing here. What does the optimistic bull case look like for bringing that back on shore? And you said that you made this point a little while ago that I really liked, which was that every software evolution is preceded by a hardware revolution. And I guess I was really interested on where we are on that spectrum of progress, and where we are on the spectrum of progress and how we're able to get to the place where we have this optimistic case for manufacturing. It's the example was because of the iPhone, we got the App Store. Because of the GPU, we have AI mining. Are we software constrained or are we hardware constrained? And where are those limitations and how do we break through them to bring the manufacturing back to the United States?
Man, thank you for asking this. What a layup. This is my favorite question. I would say there were two parts to it. on the point that hardware revolutions precede software revolutions. I really strongly believe this. I think it's almost a definitional point. If you want to have the App Store, which enabled creating a bunch of, creating Uber and a bunch of these big companies, you have to have the iPhone. To have the iPhone, you have to have Qualcomm, you have to have Broadcom, you have to have 20 years of building out networks, of building out, comms, technology. Almost all of that was on the hardware level. If you want to have deep learning, you need to have the GPU. That's 20 years of progress. If you want to have cloud computing, you have to have very cheap commodity. Kind of the whole point of what is a cloud, it's basically the idea that you can put a bunch of cheap commodity hardware in one place and then put distributed systems. You basically use like algorithms on top of this commodity hardware to kind of handle failure, handle, things breaking in the hardware in a fault tolerant way, which gives you a giant cost advantage over, hosting your own hardware. And basically we had to have 20 plus years of like memory and CPUs, et cetera, getting cheaper to do that. Part of why VR is not better right now, this is what people talk about. The hardware is not that great, and it's gotten a lot better, and the Vision Pro is a lot better, but we're still not there. With AI, I personally, and I think this is much more obvious now, but I've been saying this for many years, like I still think we're wildly hardware limited right now. And so like, even if we have AGI in 2 years, like the number of units of AGI we would have would probably be very small. Like in a hypothetical world, let's say it takes a gigawatt data center to have like one AGI. We won't have that many gigawatt data centers at that point. And for any gigawatt data center, you can probably do the same thing with, call it 10 megawatts, so like 100x more efficient, not even on the algorithm side, purely on the hardware level. Like if you start using more silicon photonics, like optimized chips, just way better interconnects, these types of things, you can probably get like 100x improvement simply just by better hardware. Anyways, I think that AI is going to be limited by hardware for the next 5 to 10 years. And don't get me wrong, I think we're going to make unbelievable progress on the software side as well in parallel. This is one of these beautiful periods where like the software and hardware are co-evolving with each other. But the software basically always evolves faster than hardware. So anyways, it's like on a much bigger level, I think we basically hit the end of a bunch of like software revolutions more or less at the same time. And so it didn't really leave many places to go. Like we hit the end of the mobile revolution roughly at the same time that I think we hit the end of the traditional cloud revolution. I'm not talking AI. AI is like the one area of software that I think is kind of at the beginning of a giant revolution. Powered by hardware though, and I will just say, even in AI hardware, like what we're seeing right now wouldn't have been possible if it weren't for NVIDIA buying Mellanox, or Mellanox existing independently if NVIDIA was still able to use it. Basically, Mellanox is an internet connect company. It's actually an Israeli company. Sequoia was the seed investor. It's acquired for $8 billion by NVIDIA 5 or 6 years ago. I can't remember when. And basically, like Mellanox is what lets NVIDIA have good full systems, not just single GPUs, but full systems and ultra high bandwidth in these systems. And it's probably the real reason why NVIDIA has a moat over AMD and Intel today was Mellanox. But there was a lot of progress on the hardware side that's enabling the AI revolution we're seeing right now. Kind of on the first question, which was how do we bring back manufacturing to the West? Like, what would that look like? I think we should all learn from the best examples we've seen. To me, the two companies in America doing manufacturing the best right now are SpaceX and Tesla. I'm wearing a SpaceX hat right now.
Nice.
Amazing company, my favorite company in the world. Well, I'm sorry, I'm not supposed to pick favorites, but come on, SpaceX.
Likewise, badass.
It's just an incredible company. But basically, look, I think SpaceX is one of the only, it's the only company I can think of, along with actually Mellanox, that is outperforming China across the board. Even Tesla is facing like very real competition from Chinese auto companies. And there's certain areas where Tesla's ahead. There's certain areas where the Chinese EV companies are ahead. But SpaceX is very far ahead of every Chinese rocket company. SpaceX should not take this for granted. They will never take it for granted. They work at maximum speed. But I think we should learn from the fact that these two companies were able to build supply chains, build giant manufacturing companies in America that are the best in the world in their categories. And I think basically the lesson that I would take away is, they started off with initial vehicles that were that had a market, but were like a low enough level of complexity that a company could do it. So like the Roadster for Tesla or the Falcon 1 for SpaceX, which was, Falcon 1 was not a great rocket, but proved that they can do it. And then it became the Falcon 9, which was an okay rocket. Before the Falcon 9 could be reused, it was still not at the state of the art, in the history of rocketry. There were probably some better rockets than the Falcon 9 expendable. But by starting with these things and vertically integrating along the way, it put these companies in a position to where then when they got to the Falcon 9 reusable, or call it the Model S, they had actually intersected and become best in the world in their classes. And they controlled their own supply chain. And so then as the companies scaled, they could keep investing in the supply chain. SpaceX announced recently that with Starlink user terminals, they're now even making their own PCB, doing their own PCB assembly, which is a much easier problem than say making a leading edge chip. But we haven't been doing much of this in North America recently. And so the fact that you start off as a rocket company and it leads all the way to be doing PCB assembly is just very bullish for manufacturing in America. And then once you have a big factory doing PCB assembly, the people that work at SpaceX doing that, someday some of them will leave and they'll actually know how to do this, and they'll probably start doing, maybe they'll start a company that just does PCB assembly for other American companies, and just these things catalyze entire supply chains and then ecosystems beyond that. And so anyways, for me, I think a giant mistake would be America trying to intersect Chinese manufacturing in areas that are already mature or already on exponential trends. I think we have to go try to find what are the next areas, what are the things that are relatively new where we can go kind of invest in them now and get ahead and then build vertically integrated supply chains there. And we have roughly 2 today in, electric vehicle manufacturing with Tesla and SpaceX with space launch. But I think we need 10 of these. And honestly, I think that if America had, I think it's as simple as if you have roughly 10 SpaceXs and Teslas that are vertically integrated, primarily manufacturing in the West, that alone will basically make all of manufacturing, that's enough to revitalize all of manufacturing in the West. And so to take this one step further, I am unbelievably bullish on a 20-year timeframe on silicon photonics. So almost everything that we use today, with silicon are silicon electronics. So, a GPU it's electronics, the computation is happening via electrons, not photons. Almost every sensor we use is an electronic sensor. So a lot of the sensors in the iPhone, et cetera, are electronic sensors. Almost every, anyways, CPUs are electronic. Almost everything is electronic. Silicon electronics is so far along in its manufacturing curve that getting to the leading edge is very hard. I mean, like hundreds of billions of dollars minimum plus 10 years at a minimum to even have a chance of getting to the leading edge. And I think you even there probably wouldn't catch up. Silicon photonics, in my opinion, is just now getting to the point where like the first real commercial applications have started to happen. And once you have first real commercial applications of something, that's when you get this feedback loop where you start to get revenue, which causes investment, and that drives the cost down because now you're building fab facilities that are optimized for photonics, not for electronics. And then as the cost goes down, you can make other products, and then the supply chain gets better, and we get better at making reliable, lasers that go on chip, which are a prerequisite for silicon photonics. And I mean, I could talk for a long time about silicon photonics, but I think silicon photonics will be as important in the 21st century as silicon electronics was in the 20th. And I think that no one is ahead right now. Like this is something where America can easily win in silicon photonics manufacturing if we're to kind of do it the right way and be smart about it right now. That said, like both China and Taiwan they feel the same way. And I think they've identified in the last like 18 months, silicon photonics as critical technologies for the next, 2 decades. And so they're now just starting to very heavily invest in it. And I'm gonna take this a little further. These things are of national strategic importance. And so with TSMC, until about 18 months ago, TSMC was willing to, so when you make a chip, there's many steps to it. One step is fabricating the device. Another step is packaging it, which is kind of when you take the chip or whatever and you kind of more or less like put the hood on it and put all the wires that come in and out of the chip, and you test and make sure that everything is kind of working properly, and a few other steps in there. Until about 18 months ago, TSMC was willing to package. So packaging is incredibly hard. Packaging is probably harder than fabricating the chips. And most people don't understand this, but packaging is probably harder than fabricating the chips. And TSMC was willing to package silicon photonics chips made by other fabs. Like if you had a chip made by Global Foundries, TSMC was still willing to package it because TSMC is the best in the world at packaging chips. But in the last 18 months, they basically stopped packaging silicon photonics chips made by other companies. So you have to now do everything with TSMC, which basically makes a strong incentive for the leading companies to only work with TSMC, which makes it hard for any other company to kind of get inroads in silicon photonics. And so I think this is like highly symbolic of how strategic Taiwan and TSMC view, which are deeply intertwined, view silicon photonics. For what it's worth, I think that's smart of them. Like I don't blame them. I think that's brilliant. Like great leadership by Taiwan. They're playing the game the right way. But it's I think real confirmation of my point of how important silicon photonics is. And this is one area, like if America can stay at the cutting edge of space, stay get to the cutting edge of silicon photonics, stay at the cutting edge of EVs. If Tesla and then others can basically get to the cutting edge of humanoid robotics, which is something that I strongly believe is coming. And I think Tesla's very well suited to manufacture these things at scale. And I hope there are many winners in America. I hope it's a highly competitive space with many winners, but manufacturing things at scale is really, really hard. I think Tesla's very well suited for making humanoid robots. Just as I'll kind of end this monologue in 1 second, but something that I think is oftentimes missed when people look at hardware companies. Well, basically, I think hardware companies, so with software companies usually get harder to build the bigger you get. Like it gets harder to acquire customers because it's not that hard to replicate the code of a software company. Once you prove that the market's good, competitors will come in, and then it becomes harder to acquire customers and all these things. With hardware companies, it's really hard to get them to work, but once they work, they actually generally get easier with scale. There's many reasons for this. Like it's insanely hard to get the supply chain working. It's very hard to make the thing. It's very hard to work out all the kinks in the system. It's, there's usually like a baseline number of things you have to build to get the system to work. But once you have a working, like if you look at basically every hardware company in history, almost every hardware company has produced many of their own products organically. Apple has so many products. Tesla has many products. NVIDIA has many products. Broadcom has many products. Qualcomm has many products. Like any hardware company has lots of products. And so if you use Apple as an analogy, Apple isn't fabricating their own devices, but they are designing them. The Vision Pro reuses a huge number of components from the iPhone. So like the, Face ID is reused. A bunch, the accelerometers are reused. The magnetometers are reused. Like I think, I may be wrong on this, but I think the Vision Pro has about 1,000 sensors in it. And some of those are like, 10 of the same sensor. But I think my estimate is something like 950 of the 1,000 were reused, like ported over from other Apple products. And there's called 50 that were like net new designed for the Vision Pro. This is such an advantage of hardware companies of like once you get going of getting to reuse other products. And this is something where for Tesla with Optimus, like I think there's a lot of things that get to be reused from, and even if not of specific like components, the processes or supply chain to make them, it's basically the same supply chain as making cars. And so it's like by starting off by getting really good at making cars in America, it can lead to making many other products and even reusing a lot of the components in there. And so this is kind of like my core thesis is we have to have about 10 SpaceX Teslas, and that's how you really bring manufacturing back to America.
Hey, Bankless Nation, sorry for the interruption, and I hope you are enjoying listening to Shaun Maguire and our exploration of all the rabbit holes that exist in the world of frontier technology. There are even more things to explore in the second half of the show. If you want to continue listening to the rest of the show, where we continue talking about space, Elon Musk, brain-link interfaces, and Shaun's deeply optimistic outlook for the future, you'll have to go to our brand new channel, Limitless, to listen to the rest of the show there. Limitless is our brand new podcast, our brand new YouTube channel with new co-hosts Joss and Ajaz, where we focus on all things AI and frontier tech. You'll also find myself and Ryan joining in for interviews and roundtables on that episode feed as well, because Ryan and I are both deeply curious about the technologies that Josh and Ajaz are eager to explore. So, if you're naturally curious about technology and you just want to get ahead of the weird future that's hurtling our way, join us as we venture forth into new frontiers on the Limitless YouTube channel. There is a link in the show notes that will take you to the new YouTube channel and will also take you to the Limitless podcast feeds if you enjoy podcasts as well. If you're excited about Limitless, we ask that you subscribe to the new YouTube channel, and also if you listen to podcasts, make sure to give us those 5-star reviews wherever you get your podcasts so we can more aggressively grow and accelerate Limitless to be the best frontier tech show in existence. In the future, you will still see some Limitless podcast episodes on the Bankless feeds, but over time, these two feeds will separate and venture forth into their own frontiers. This is a pretty big moment for us here at Bankless, and we are glad you are on the journey with us. Thanks a lot. In the Wild West of DeFi, stability and innovation are everything, which is why you should check out FRAX Finance, the protocol revolutionizing stablecoins, DeFi, and rollups. At the core of FRAX Finance is FRAX USD, which is backed by BlackRock's institutional BUIDL fund. FRAX designed FRAX USD for best-in-class yields across DeFi, T-bills, and carry trade returns all in one. Just head to frax.com, then stake it to earn some of the best yields in DeFi. Want even more? Bridge your FRAX USD over to the Fraxtal Layer 2 for the same yield plus Fraxtal points, and expect explore Fractal's diverse Layer 2 ecosystem with protocols like Curve, Convex, and more, all rewarding early adopters. FRAX isn't just a protocol, it's a digital nation, powered by the FXS token and governed by its global community. Acquire FXS through FRAX.com or your go-to DEX, stake it, and help shape FRAX Nation's future. Ready to join the forefront of DeFi? Visit FRAX.com now to start earning with FRAX USD and staked FRAX USD. And for Bankless listeners, you can use FRAX.com/r/Bankless when bridging to Fractal for exclusive Fractal perks and boosted rewards. UNISWAP is your gateway to a more efficient DeFi experience. With UNISWAP, swapping and bridging across 13 chains is simple, fast, and cost-effective, helping you move value wherever, whenever. Thanks to deep liquidity on the UNISWAP protocol, you'll enjoy minimal price impact on every trade. And now UNISWAP v4 takes it even further. Swappers benefit from gas savings on multi-hop swaps and ETH trading pairs, while liquidity providers can create new pools at 99% lower costs. The best part, you don't have to do anything extra. Each trade is automatically routed through UNISWAP X, V2, V3, and V4, so you get the most efficient swap without even thinking about it. Whether you're swapping, sending, on-ramping, off-ramping, or bridging, Uniswap's web app and wallet gives you the tools to unlock DeFi's full potential on Ethereum, Base, Arbitrum, UNICHAIN, and more. Use Uniswap's web app and wallet for a more efficient way to use DeFi. Imagine verifying yourself without handing over personal data. No hacked databases, no unnecessary personal exposure for airdrops, and no AI bots ruining community governance. Meet Self, the on-chain identity verification protocol built for privacy and control. Self protocol uses zero-knowledge proofs to confirm your identity safely. Users prove key details like age or citizenship without revealing sensitive personal information. Self never stores your data, it only generates cryptographic proofs. Here's how it works in 3 steps. First, register and verify. Use the Self app to scan your biometric passport's RFID chip. Self verifies authenticity with zero-knowledge proofs. Each passport creates one unique identity. Second, you can share proofs privately. Third-party apps request identity proofs, like confirming you're over 18. You can also link proofs securely to public wallets for airdrops or governance participation. And then last, secure verification. Apps validate your proofs instantly on-chain, like on Celo, or off-chain. Audited by ZK Security, the Self app is live on iOS and Play Store. Visit self.xyz and follow Self Protocol on X. Imagine a world where your day-to-day banking runs on a blockchain. That's exactly what MANTLE is building, powered by a $4 billion treasury and poised to become the largest sustainable on-chain financial hub. As part of their 2025 expansion, MANTLE is introducing 3 new core innovation pillars that bridge traditional finance with decentralized technology. First is their enhanced indexed fund. Aiming for $1 billion in AUM by Q1, it provides optimized exposure to Bitcoin, ETH, Solana, and USD, complete with built-in yield opportunities. Next, MANTLE Banking promises to revolutionize global value transfer through seamless blockchain-powered banking services, bridging crypto into your daily life. Finally, MANTLE X blends AI with DeFi to deliver an intelligent, user-friendly experience for everyone. And the best part is that this is all in addition to their already launched products like MANTLE Network, METH, and FBTC. Ready to step into the future of finance? Follow MANTLE on X at MANTLE_official and join the on-chain revolution today. Have you ever imagined Bitcoin and Ethereum truly working as one, unlocking the full potential of Bitcoin, DeFi, and more? Meet HEMI, a groundbreaking modular network designed precisely for that vision. Co-founded by early Bitcoin core dev Jeff Garzik. Unlike other Layer 2s that treat Bitcoin and Ethereum as separate silos, HEMI connects these giants into a single, powerful super network. With HEMI, users gain unprecedented asset portability and possibilities, combining Bitcoin security and value with Ethereum's versatility. HEMI's unique innovation, the HEMI virtual machine, integrates a fully indexed Bitcoin node directly into an EVM, enabling dApps that seamlessly interact with both networks. And with HEMI's proof of proof, or POP consensus, users benefit from truly decentralized, censorship-resistant Bitcoin-level security. Since its recent mainnet launch, HEMI has rapidly ascended the ranks as one of the top Bitcoin chains. With a thriving global community and robust ecosystem support, HEMI isn't just building a network, it's shaping the future of Web3, DeFi, and beyond. Visit hemi.xyz/Bankless to learn more, discover ways to interact, participate in the leaderboard program, and be part of the community that's uniting Bitcoin and Ethereum.